That shit is crazy. How you doing? My name is Adam Lamb. I am the producer and host of Chef Life Radio, dedicated to assisting culinary professionals to become the best version of themselves, both personally and professionally. And this is Friday Food for Thought. Yep. And before we get going, I just wanted to do a shameless plug, if that's cool. Um, Today we posted and published 2 episodes of Chef Life Radio. Both of them are with Chef Maria Campbell. There's the regular episode, and during these interviews, I always kind of co-opt the last 15 minutes to produce another show called On the Dock, which is about more personal and profound experiences that we've all had and that we can all relate to. And these are usually reserved for our Chef Life crew members, folks who have become subscribers and given a little bit of themselves to support the show. But this episode was so, it hit my heart in a lot of different ways. So I thought that everybody should hear it. So that's why there's 2 episodes this week. And today on Friday Food for Thought, we're talking about the promise and peril of my very own chef coat. I mean, how could some white cloth and black thread be so bound up with such drive, dedication, stress, and envy? You know, I'm going to talk about the implications of a personally embroidered jacket that when I finally got it, both held me up and held me back from becoming the best version that I could be. And maybe you've had the same experience. Maybe you've had the same pride, doubt about earning yours. So in the corner of my closet, I've got a collection of embroidered chef coats that I have saved from each job that I had. The other day, I was in the closet and I was kind of fingering through them. And as I went from coat to coat, it triggered memories of about the places I'd been, the people that I had worked with, and about earning my place among my peers. And if you've ever had that same experience of being gifted a brand new jacket with your name and your title on it, maybe you've had the same type of pride and misgivings. I mean, they're kind of like tattoos. I mean, if you ask anybody who has them about why they get them, you might get a couple different responses. For me, it's always been about marking time. Getting a tattoo sometimes celebrates time well spent at a job, and sometimes it's a freedom from time and effort wasted. So I have worked so hard physically and as well as emotionally, bottling up any weakness or self-doubt that I ever had. Most of the time, I felt ill-prepared for my role, and fear became a huge motivator for me early on. They even have a name for it now. It's called imposter syndrome. And the reality is that for most of us, we all suffer from it one way or another, or at least one time or another. I started in this business at 15 years old, washing dishes in a local restaurant. It was the restaurant my dad went to. And so there was kind of this unspoken effort by me to be acknowledged by my father as a man unto my own right. If he would come in and see me, grabbing bus pans and stuff. And yeah, there's no jacket that has my name on it. And yet it became my entry point into the industry. And for the longest time, this starched white jacket held a fascination for me. As a matter of fact, fast forward some years later, there was be a server who was having a particularly difficult time with a table, and they would come into the kitchen completely frustrated about the fact that they were pushing back, the guest was pushing back on them in all kinds of different ways. And I would say, okay. And I would strap on a fresh apron and walk out to the table. And there's something about the mystique of that jacket that certainly customers get, but I think also we share as culinarians as a place to achieve too. And I would walk out to the table and all of a sudden there's no problem. And of course I would be, not throwing it around, but there's something about the jacket, the promise of that jacket that lends itself to authority. And that's where I got confused. I didn't necessarily understand what authority meant. I had been trained, shamed, and conditioned from my very early years to basically suppress my humanity in service to a particular effort, which was to be able to cajole, kid, demand, motivate, push a certain group of people who sometimes didn't see eye to eye, who might have been at odds. And I have to strip all that away and somehow communicate with them in such a way to get them to a certain point. Now, I had been taught to be a good manager. And in some cases, that meant being a good steward of my resources, how many dollars I had to spend for payroll, food dollars, etc. But nowhere along my journey did anyone ever teach me about what it meant to be a good leader. And ultimately, that's what that jacket came to mean for me. So, just to kind of give you some perspective, I want to share with you a picture of my very, very first Brigard jacket. Yeah, that's me in the middle. That's Dan Marino in the center. On the other side of me is Steve Caputo, Stevie C, who was the banquet chef at that time. And the gentleman all the way on the other side is a storied professional who I have a lot of respect for by the name of Peter Schmidt, who was one of the youngest master chefs in Germany ever, and who taught me in ways that would last me my entire life. But at the beginning, Stevie and I were pitted against one another to become the executive chef of this hotel. It was the very first hotel that I ever ran. And the competition was so intense. And in a lot of ways, it was completely bound up around what it would be like to actually put that jacket on and walk out into the kitchen and interact with the crew. And most of the people that supported me were the very first people that I was instructed to eliminate. And you can make all kinds of arguments about, that's the way that good business is done. And, in 1996 in Fort Lauderdale, that might have made a lot of sense. But yet all those little decisions about how we treated one another and the people who looked up to us have brought us to this particular point. And the one thing that I never understood, that I should have understood sooner, is that putting on that jacket was about humility. It wasn't necessarily about being the apex predator, the shark swimming the tank, ready to devour anybody that wasn't going to pull their weight. It was really about being a mentor. And I was lucky enough to have some really good ones. And Peter's Peter knows that I consider him to be one of the best mentors I ever had. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he was soft with me. He put me in situations in which the things that I learned came with a price. And that price was my arrogance. And for that, I owe him a great deal. And there are other ones, Ed Jameson and a few others, that really showed me what being a true leader meant. And yet, it took me a long time to understand that it wasn't about what was on the jacket. It was about who I was being in the jacket. And so it came down to, which came first, humility or courage? Could I actually have the courage to be humble and be able to relate and connect with my peers and say, I don't necessarily know what this is. Do you know? Can I learn from you? Ultimately, I understood that to be a great leader didn't mean that you had to understand or be proficient at everything. Like, you should probably have an understanding of everything, but it's not like you had to execute perfectly on all that. That's why, from where I'm sitting now, I understand that true leadership is about bringing together a group of people whose competencies cover everything. And so this is not a series about what a shitty person I was, or the fact that I was unprepared for the jobs that I took on. I purposely put myself in these positions because I knew that they were going to be situations in which I was going to have to learn, and I would have to learn fast and become really, really good at what I did. But what I really needed to be good at was connecting and being present to each one of my team members so that they knew that I would go to the wall for them. And there have been times in my life when I didn't do that because it was more about the name on my jacket than who I was being. And so I would say that this is not about falling on a sword or kicking my ass about the jackass that I was, or as someone on LinkedIn so perfectly put last week, the dick that I look like in the picture. The point being is that it's not about who you've been. The point is about who you are becoming. Who I am right now is the result of everything I thought about myself yesterday and the day before. And if I took that as the truth, as the gospel of who I am and who I'll become, then I'd be lost. But I know that in any given situation, any given moment, I can change. If I am self-aware enough, if I'm willing enough, if I am just courageous enough to be humble and say, fuck it, man. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to work at it. And are you willing to work with me? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. And so these jackets in my closet represent not only really good memories for me, but they're also like my tats. It's an opportunity for me to stop and consider who I was when I had them and who I get to become tomorrow. So I hope this has served you. If it has, please share it. It's really, really important that you understand that we're in this together, that I really appreciate everything that you're doing. We may not have met, and I get that, but there's always a chance, brother or sister. So stand tall and frosty. Keep doing what you're doing for no other reason that you know that it's right. Because the promise and peril of your own embroidered chef coat comes with things that you'll gain and things that you'll lose. And hopefully the thing that you lose is this ego-driven idea that it has to be you and you have to carry the weight on your shoulders, because that, my friend, is something nobody should have to bear. So God bless. See you next week. And this has been Friday Food for Thought. Keep it churning, man. Keep thinking about it. You never know when things might change.